Mahamuni Soha
뭐야 다 참말이야 참 리더시들이 쉬어다 안한테 대해서 거서 같이 대스는가 톤 계산 거를 저 때문에 다 같이 매 건다 쉬어 또
So if you want to say good morning and Tashi's delayed, can you hearing me? Is that okay? Good morning and Tashi's delayed to everybody, and apologies for being a bit late. They got a bit distracted on the road on the way here and went on a bit of a sightseeing trip on the way as well.
dạ đó nghe là khá số đấy nghe là anh ấy 싫은 những 부터 배치 뚱기 nghe mà của 뚱기 Tene any mandate na mandate ba. Nga to mate kaduma share session de to.
So we're going to start with some prayers, and we're going to start with the Heart Sutra. Rinpoche will do in Tibetan, we'll do in English, and then we'll do the mandala, and then start from there.
Oh yeah, mazanje me shera paru ji ma ge me ga na ge ngo go yin so so ran ri yi xi ju ba de song ge we yum da cha che lo ta ta ga den ba ran ga den ba ra sang ga den bu de so ta ya ga den ga ba ran ga so da
At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called apparent perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five practices also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of profound perfection of wisdom? He said that the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly or repeatedly beholding those five articles also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feelings, discrimination, composition factors, and consciousness are empty.
There is no I, so fourth up to no, including no mind element, and no mental conscious element.
There is no ignorance, no extinction, and so up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no
Non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell on the three times also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment, in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata Om Gadi Gadi, Pada Sam Gadi, Odi Soha. Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. And commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that one should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras and Gandharas, were overjoyed and highly praised what had been spoken by the Bhagavan. Ahom Wanchen Seji Saji Om Nezareki Ahom Ji Shareko Ego Yo Lui Abumila Jalo Babolo sambuling nu balanjo janjamina dalubak maya dabalat dababadu jaminem bajaminended boje saji given doje pa mamu bayelodo kolorimboje Rinpoche, Sombo Rinpoche, Lombo Rinpoche, Lambo Rinpoche, Tasho Rinpoche, Mabo Rinpoche, Teshimbuye Bumba, Gekma, Drigoma, Luma, Kama, Mitoma, Duboma, Nasama, Dijama, Nima, Dawa, Rinpoche, Du, Chalana, Bagya, Wagansa, Usela dami, Beje, Busu, Sopa, Masawa, Baya, Beje, Du yandu satum pedo jesum gyabje dagdi rinpoche, tu dun lunju tempe gyasen shenenan, tabimbo titim something dinyoy duwa. Tuje duwe don tuje shuso, sena dada tsebo, mata tujamye damba jente, tenjen tamje la tuje wanji dedati, ingi labdu, so.
Sangye chedan so yin cho nam la chang jun pa dun dan ning gyab su dagi che shen gi ben so nam gi ro lan pen jire sang gi ro ba ra sho sang ge chedan so yin cho nam la chang jun pa dun dan ning gyab su dagi che shen gi ben so nam gi ro lan pen jire sang gi ro ba ra sho Sangye chedan so yin cho nam la chang jun par dun da ning ge zu dagi che shen gi ben so nam gi ro lan ben jire sang ge ro ba ra sho mo ya to chen da de ni bi ge thoma kare sana ani kunong 배 다 꾸는 줄 꾸는 야고신한 그래 최 천년 외에야 안 베게 삼반 남다 돈네 펜베 삼베 꾸나 라네 아니 베게 어다 베게 최 쳐야다 안 생게 남베 장 아니 가서래 먼저다 생야데 조 그래서나 아 세디네제 디기 두비아지게 된다라 디기 두다 아니 동해 파 매워서다 我顶着情况有那最起码嘛送个药的，那基本上呗，我立马3年让他先他们家来判把起，别路边，我判把家庭不用呀，我顶着个弄个团的3年过来，
So to begin with, it's really important to start a teaching like this or listening to a teaching like this with the right motivation. So as far as our motivation for being here and for listening for the teaching, it should be as much as possible focused on not just ourselves but on the benefit of others, the welfare and the benefit and the welfare of others, understanding that the great texts which are taught by the great masters of the past have all been taught with this principal aim of bringing happiness, increasing genuine real happiness and the reduction of suffering, not just for ourselves but for all living beings. So try and motivate as strongly as you can to be listening to these teachings, to be here listening for the benefit, the welfare of all living beings.
다 다른 나데 토마체 lumbote 토마리 인지 lum바 내가 토마 제자 아니 잉글랜드 땅에만에 벽을 규토는 데바 첨부 연계 가서래 변한다 랍다 쪼바다 당한나시 맹가다 딘데 쪼바데서 고행용라 안수세 사제 대가 별게버래 제사 다가체 친제 제사 심딩네 지 가서래 녀버를 지 시라유 더잖아.
So this is the first time that Rinpoche's been here in England, and he feels a real connection with the place. And the reason being that Rinpoche himself was born in Tibet, and out of all the sort of Western countries in the world, it's England really which has the closest connection with Tibet. In Tibet there was a school which was founded by English people. There was a hospital that was created from English people visiting there. So out of all Western countries, it's particularly England that has probably the most connection, or used to have the most connection with Tibet. So therefore, Rinpoche being here in England feels very, very close and happy to be here.
Oh yeah, Bodhicitta, 지기럽다 배 줘봐 상부 쉬어야 되는데 시기도 제가 내 레샤탄 지 통통的다른 데뭐 사대 리드 삼바 아니지 타마 배 컨주마죠 타마 테는 배들다 랑갈 배타 간다 잡대니 소로 랑갈 짐발란 단대니 소 지 통야면 되미 롱고데 권내 타네 롱바장마 미 배도다 연대요 장냐다 봐 대선장 시비시비게 야본도.
So from what Rinpoche has seen of our country, then it appears to be most people seem quite well behaved, and the place seems fairly clean. Unlike in India, you don't see too much of people messing the pathways and using everywhere as a toilet and things like that. So from what Rinpoche has seen so far, it seems like a very clean and the behaviour of most people seems very good.
Oh yeah. 어떻게 달랭엘이야 다리데 당고를 가란 루기를 비치지 말라나 비치지 말라나 다양 가사 카지 킹그 말와 비치지 말라고 이 나께서디 별래 별래게네 아니 가소래 게네 변하려야 아니 갸가 날렌타네 비게 다 가사 낭베추 비게 낭슈디 차상어대 양타바 변하려냐면은 달로 동다혼에 봐 교르네 에 가소래 변하려야 다간다 깨트 벽에래만도 자가 나린텔 케벤 중공 다 연매나디 어디디 빈좀 망고치 봐 별패나 어디 비기 자가 나린테 지만 치신 변할 옆에 인상 안디 슈킹서로 봐 디체는 가 춘주간에 낭주 딱 미망고치기 낭주기 뒤여래 재산디 손자 춘주간에 가보여 또잖아.
So Rinpoche, just to explain a little bit about himself and his individual history. Rinpoche was born in Tibet, and from an early age he was exposed obviously to the Buddhist teachings that are there in Tibet, particularly those Buddhist teachings where have they come from. It's not that they arose just in Tibet. The teachings that you find in Tibet were very pure teachings which have been sort of transposed from, in particular, the great Buddhist monastery in India called Nalanda, and were transposed from Nalanda over to Tibet in a very exact fashion. So apart from the difference in the language, that obviously there was Sanskrit in India and Tibetan in Tibet, apart from that language difference, in general the teachings were very precisely transferred from India over to Tibet. So it was that tradition, that very pure tradition that Rinpoche was exposed to when he was very young, and he was very happy and very pleased, even as a young child, to be presented with that.
뭐야, 어디체? 제가 아니 상계 좀 된데, 먼저 던바도 상계 좀 된데, 최도만 된게 당보. 네 자가래, 자가. 갸갈 페베레 갸가 쳔나니 갸가 디니 아니 갸가다 다 날린다 라면 되거든 디슈고야 다 케베 원고 케중 인딩 케바 이마자마서 두버베 토 비게 페데니 당고 몰루도다 아니 비게 아리아 데바 다가난시 에 밴덴 다와타바 스타가즈베 요나 메나로티 밴덴 다와타바 다데마 겐두 성인 세제 요아레 되게 숑 되게 랩스 벽에 나는 요아레 벽이 나는 요아레 여바자마세 아니 딘데바 요아레 벽랑게 케두 닌딩 기부 망고 쳔네 제라마 쫑가바 침비 위에 딱 간다 망고 쳔네 되게 다 별이 여바디 약한 나는데 상계가 틈에 매봐 되게 차창 양타바체 딘데 체제 마 아니 자완데와 차장체 딘데 요아레
So, and if you look at obviously who was the founder of Buddhist teachings, it was the Buddha himself, and he himself was an Indian, of course, was born in India and became enlightened in India. Is that right? But then after the Buddha, if you look at the history of Buddhism within India, many great masters, not just great scholars, but great practitioners arose over the years in India. People like Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, Aryadeva, great masters that not only knew the teachings in a scholarly way, but also practiced and realized the teachings in their minds. And it was from teachers like that that the Dharma, which then was extensively existent within the land, was transposed over to Tibet. And all the writings that those great masters wrote, both their root texts and the commentaries on them, were translated over into Tibetan. And so we have in Tibetan very clearly and very precisely all the teachings from those great masters. Not only that, the teachings having come from India to Tibet, there were many masters within Tibet who then mastered them, who first of all studied and understood precisely and then practiced and realized those teachings. So within Tibet itself, there are great masters who both understood and practiced these teachings.
어디제? 내가 춘주 강래야. 춘주 강래야. 아니 버디 다나 심사샤 공den기 다 비게 진주셔버렸어. 대체네 딱가 춘주 강래야. 아니 비게 추로전 지하가 된데스 다 그거 요 말해. 이내야 아니 다 공den기 셔야라 추승이 배 독자 시다이 봐. 왜 당원에 다네 딘데 시기도 다 롭지 않는데 시다 지거때 이지 윤네 배배 이지 생기면도 나 이지 잡아내매. 제자 아니 다 춘주 간이야 아니 비게 개외신이 딘데 다 개봐 레진이들 하버드스네 아니 암조니네 토마 가래서나 주주 첨부티 주주 때때니 저 니도 신상 그 소리 년가 싫어요 생라 미마통체 나도 왜 춘주제다 쇼마이네 배 춘주 바오마도半년가 지버래 뭐 딘데 제제니 디제도 전부 쉽지 비 편도 첨부래샤 대단 되니 로종 과로요래 로종 지난 전에 비게 낭주의 로장야 레디야 믹스기 로종스 벽에나 로종 스타일 무슨 그거다 뭐네 기부 담바도 냠내체 송샤바 비키도 기부도 로종 투루사 된가 대춘주가 라송 네 개배신이잖아 대송인자 아니 비게 지난 밀 강에 망고 태되잖바 어디 지글로샤나 아니 미션달이 더 배지 되는 용 말봐 대디디나는 셰비나 단다 강에 여바데 람냐 교바신 배 디기가 배 딘데스 연구도 항상야 대송인자 아니 비게 가사 단 디로좀 치고 어디 삼 춘주간에 망주 장고 웃음 다 장사 여 말이 표현하나 디디 딘데제 딘디 튕기요
and obviously at the time that Rinpoche was born, or very soon after he was born in Tibet, then of course all the difficulties and troubles came in Tibet, and the Chinese invaded and as we all know, destroyed and took over basically Tibet. So although he was born into this Buddhist place, the opportunity actually when he was young became very difficult to actually study properly the Buddhist teachings the way that he would have done before, and so although there were teachers still around, basically you had to be very careful. If you were going to study Buddhist teachings, you had to do so really very secretly almost, and try and look at things and be able to study and be able to look at things, but only in a very quiet way and in a way that you weren't noticed. And there was a lot of pressure on Rinpoche and on other people there to change, to become like the Chinese, to be brainwashed into their way of thinking. But Rinpoche never accepted that. He never sort of believed in what they were trying to tell him, or never really accepted this way of thinking. And he was able to study some texts. So first of all, he was able to extensively study the Bodhisattva's way of life, which he found extremely helpful, extremely useful. And then after that, he was able to study, through his teachers and so forth, he was able to study mind training. The texts, all these texts which come down in Lineage, which show how to transform difficulties into the path, how to transform difficult circumstances into ways of creating virtue and good. And from that, obviously, particularly being in the position he was in there with the difficulties in Tibet, then the mind training, this text or this tradition of mind training was very useful, and really has it's come down in a line from great scholars and great practitioners, and a real, through this practice, a real ability to transform difficult things into happiness, into the path, and therefore into happiness within the mind.
어디 단다 로종사 로종 투르사죠. 투르스는 비게 딱 자가케 봤단다. 조지 반대 아디샤다. 다때는 별난 게딱 겨원 놈들만 오네 비게 가사 로종 연나네 가당 라마 탐바스 그래. 또 코나스 디디 딱 망고 열어봐 계속인데 되게 송 비스 체제 조디 체샤지. 요래 당원에 차네 비게 쉬우지 딱 디기 잡아야 돼. 어디 통바상 디 페이지 맞수 연도 좀 야가 연도 상념도 케이. 어디 페이지 케이. 제가 캐나다 디 그루이나 아, 나кен 최연의 매네 켈링이 연의 매네 다 뱀마스베다 디레샤 삼류 치리스도 삼 람상 교배다야 펜도 첨벌에.
So this whole tradition of mind training or Lojong texts come through various masters, came through Atisha into his disciple Tsongkhapa, and then there was a whole lineage of what were known as Kadampa masters who transmitted and followed this great way of teaching. But this really, in a very practical day-to-day level, the training, what we call mind training, or able to transform things with the mind, is a very precious teaching. Although Rinpoche was only to see bits and pieces of it when he was in Tibet, he found it incredibly useful. And all of us, really, if you get a chance to study and examine more closely these teachings on mind training, you'll find that they're a very, very precious system of teachings, which allows you right in the moment to transform things which are difficult, things which are problems, into things which are actually happiness, or the causes of happiness. And Rinpoche was so impressed and liked these teachings so much that when he did actually come from Tibet to India, the texts that he carried with him were all these Lojong or mind training texts.
Tene tao chigdung ge dunju peji dungu yimbe dungu la Mao Zedong ta gongbo zo ba Mao Zedong gongbo zo ne 배팅 교바 쳔다 교바 쳔네 신네 아니 비게 가서 그래 다 교바 쳔네 비게 탐라 시우티 녜메 틴데 기타 간다 무기 신도 알아서 배지 다 중요한 말에 대체네 다 미망보지 엔데네 다 비게 가서 대주어야 봐주 로야 그 고이체버래 로초야 대송인자 미망보지 다 자가나리야 다디 낭조로전시야 다 자가나 여러봐 뭐 딘데시 망고도 나이다 토마 네 응아주 개베싱이 다 딘데다 망고 공사 장군 쳔베 독지 자가나래 녜마 벽 강한 여번은 쑥셔었어 다 디네 로전데 지 총도 시지 강가 딘데 송고도라 나라인 런데 쳔 탑시 남반 나조 탑시 담다 망고 쳐도 누구 알았다 다는 딘데스 누구는 나 딘데 마용체 탑시 따네 아니 직동국제 겨주 저 경영 루쇼들에 다 가는 인식잖아. 다 간다. 딘데지리야. 또 경영 배배청 경영이 그래요. 딘데지기다 되네 주 용토송. 주 용래 야가려야. 용토네. 되네 용토네 다 야가나려야. 아니 토마 거기서 공사 장고신 뭐 현재 아니 비게 람정 하나만 신체제 왔다 비게 자가 호조래야 당가 조 호조래 자가 호조래 세라권 봤어지 대서 숨 열어 봐 지나 비게 가서 출루 용적 아주 추규 용적이 뒤여 로전 시세요 뒤나네가 세랄 침이 세라다나네 어제제 아니 베라완 침보래 다 자가 배통 혼내 타네 비게 가서래 배데 가서래 꽤 점네 추지야데 랑게 되는 꽤 점네 셰샤네 가게 많이도 꽤 점다 가게 현아견이요 말 베라완 땅아서 도지 그래도 너무 배시 시에고로 변한 다 비게 요 말. 라완 체네 아니 가서래 추 비게 가서다 비게 가서 로전 치야 비게 마다 미게 뒤에 릴람네야 체제 차자 가서 로전 차 그거 청소 디체 되는 라마 담바 공스 장고 준비에 기부터 망고 되는 송주셔 로다르 어딘데 체네 그거 야고 시다 청소 다 지다 그래서 로이 다 니슈나르 방가 로 니슈락스 딘디질라 용 디네 베트 추 롱제 청원래
And then in 1979, things got more difficult in Tibet. There was Mao Zedong died at that time. 79 was it? Died at that time, and things became much more difficult. And they were already difficult, but they become much tighter and much more. The controls became more, and the ability to actually study or practice became more and more difficult. And many people, many Tibetans who wanted to study, wanted to practice the teachings, had to go to India, and many people went over from Tibet to India, more than had already gone. And then eventually Rinpoche realized, he didn't go immediately with the people who went a bit earlier, but by 1982, then he realized that was the only option, and using various means and going, in fact, with many companions, he went from Tibet and over to India. Once reaching India, then the first thing he did was to see His Holiness Dalai Lama and meet with him. And then he went to South India, and in South India you have the three great monasteries, Sera, Drepung and Ganden. And Rinpoche joined Sera Monastery down in South India. And there he was able to begin his formal studies, which meant all the traditional, right up from Dura, through the 5 different texts, the formal studies which are done in the monastery. So he did those in Sera. And during that time, every year, he would come up to Dharamsala or to His Holiness Dalai Lama's teaching. So every year had the opportunity to listen, to go to the teachings of His Holiness. So really that time when he first arrived in Tibet was quite a sort of mind-opening, if you like, or quite a time of rejoicing, because suddenly from being in Tibet, where he really was restricted so much in what you could do and what you could say and what you could practice, arriving in India, suddenly you could do what you wanted. You could shout it from the rooftops that you were practicing Dharma, or you could really express yourself and were allowed the freedom to practice and to study. So that having that freedom was a really special thing.
어떠잖아. 어디 젠다 간다. 아니 그거 양보 싫어 중으로 알아. 당가 이거도 말아. 안줄 텔이야. 비 그거 양보 배치 뒤치 다가난신 라마 있는 망고제네. 라마다 장고는 진 위에 아니 길로 사자 닝마 그 용존에 딱 가서래. 담아 쉬니. 딘디체는 줄르리미 딱 간다. 깨바 성보 싫어 중송. 뒤치 되네. 계시 당찬 되는 계시 당찬 다 루바냠네 제때 참대야다 다가는 신 뒤때 되네 가서 갈라 다 파주 된데스 다 실로 둬야 돼 용로 시스템이 폐실 개가 망설래샤 레샤 아는 거라서 표가 있네 강한신 바다 간다 소소 뒤에나 아니 비게 가서 오래 가서 뒤주에나 아니 비게 감비지미 터네 가서 갈래 누구요 봐
And then so that time, what's been able to be established under the guidance of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and under him the other lamas of all the different traditions, Gelug, Sakya, Nyima, and Kagyu lineages, all the different 4 traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, they've at least been able to re-establish quite a large amount of what they had with India. Under the guidance of His Holiness, those traditions have been able to flourish a little bit in India, and what they had in Tibet has been able to be continued, at least in some form. So that's been really a fantastic thing that's been able to happen and been able to continue like that. Then Rinpoche himself, once he finished his Geshe studies down in Serra, then he spent some time doing personal retreat, trying to actually bring the teachings in a retreat fashion. And then having done that for a period of time, Rinpoche has been invited to various places all around the world. So he's now had the opportunity to go to many different countries, which is and also a wonderful thing to be able to do. And that if you have something to give and they have some teaching and time and ability, then it's a wonderful thing to be able to do that and to visit all these places.
비게 가서래. 단다디 쉐안디 내마 쉐안디 제라마 종갑 침벤제베 람기 조본 남숨 제제. 단다 뒤뒤지요. 뒤뒤 다 can서 님버스 킹거라 봐. 어디 마 쉐아니. 람기 조본 남숨 신호.
So the actual teaching or text we're going to be looking at during these couple of days is this fairly condensed text by Lama Tsongkhapa called the Three Principles of the Path, which presumably you've all got in front of you, yes?
뭐야? 어디 전? 다 제가 낭주난의 셰베 랍제디 아니 지단 가서 그래. 상계 좀 된데디 마송야디 로봇 탐젤이야. 디 낭바레 니치버스 요마네. 심지 용을 편야체도. 비게 람드엔데 신신 말로 와베 비게 가서 그래. 심지 내가 그 비게 동해세네 디기 두베네 타라 동해 탐제세네 타르바 땡게 때봤어. 디 두베치에도 상계 좀 된데기 송바래. 디 송비 인자 아니 디 가사라 단디 낭주난에 송베 랍잔디 비게 수 암절 고비네. 최케 링이는다 매네 수 암절 고비네. 오 미트 구양 삼로 갸천로야. 삼로 단다. 비게 될 때네 어느 비게 쳔데네지 디기체 여버테 베지 디테레샤 도잖아.
Now, in general, the teachings of the Buddha are something which the Buddha. Why did the Buddha give the teachings? Why did he teach the Dharma? For the purpose of all living beings. And Buddha didn't discriminate. He wasn't giving the teachings just for Buddhists and leaving out non-Buddhists. The motivation or the intention behind the Buddha's teaching was to benefit or to help all living beings, however they may appear, wherever they are. And if you look at all the teachings of the Buddha, the real and the teachings that have followed on from the Buddha, the intention behind all those teachings has been starting from the temporary happiness of today, the momentary happiness of now, and the relief of suffering, right from those sort of minor or temporary types of happiness and relief of suffering, all the way through to the higher types of happiness, all the way up to the complete happiness of Buddhahood. The intention or the motivation behind those teachings is to give temporary and ultimate happiness to all living beings and to relieve all living beings from suffering and take them out of that suffering.
어디잖아. 어디제? 제가 사계 좀 된데디 로봇 탐지 근거한테 껴버려. 마도 근겨버려. 상계 좀 된데기 배 딩에 다인다 스피긴데 밖에 직체. 다 딩에 녀르스 야 종야 직체. 근데 요만해. 비게 로봇 비게 탐지 미즈면 로봇 탐지 NPG 가서 상계 좀 된데기 비게 ngaranzo 비게 잡아도 소소 잡아 여러바다. 원 딜레 상계가 ngazo 잡아디 봄줄을 하가네. 강급에 잡았으니 니게 동의들 되나 지마루냐 동의를 해단디 딘데다 디기 톱다 딘데 공부시슌이 제가 대성인자 아니 로봇 탐지 근거한테 겹 로봇 탐지 비게 년도 쓰기요. 다 상계기 비게 매버서야 너버시야 가르선 심지 유예베 아니 심 모르마 뭐시바 가지고 녀몽세 나그베치 나네 녀몽세 어떤 디 파 매버서 당어만 디스시기난 거요. 언터잖아.
So we refer to the Buddha as being our refuge or our protector. And why do we use that term? Why is it the Buddha is given that term? Because the Buddha, from his point of view, doesn't discriminate between living beings. He doesn't see some beings as being unpleasant or his enemy or people he doesn't like, and other beings as people he particularly does like or as his favourites. The Buddha has no discrimination in that way. He sees all living beings, however they are, however they appear, as being close to him, as being beings which he wants to help and benefit and bring happiness to. And therefore, when we look at why is the Buddha therefore our refuge, our protector, because the love that the Buddha has for all living beings, the compassion and love that he has for all beings, is limitless. Compared to the love that we have even for people who are close to us or our family, the love the Buddha has is infinitely greater, and that's towards every single living being. And if we talk about friend-enemy, the only thing that's an enemy from the Buddha's point of view are unsettled or are uncalm minds. So delusions or afflictive ways of thinking, afflictive emotions. Those things are what the Buddha sees as enemy, nothing else.
뭐야, 어떻잖아. 어디지? 다 데리마 쉬안디 제라마 종가바 첨보 제제 콩 별을 좀 별바래. 암도래 별나네 암도 쓰라. 암도 통래. 다 공원 간데래서나 아니 상계 좀된 대기 지준 잠배양라. 나는 양게 내버도 괜히 집에 속이는 상계 잡아서 대시고는 문제라고 카바치는 여바 인체지 상계기 지준 잠배양은 캐나 만 양을 대비 수입된배 슈 제라야 아니 카바치는 별이야 지당 비게 상계 스케메버체 지당 민능 신체제 딘데 통네 집에 속이서 제바드 가르치는 상계 제바치 그랬어 비게 상계기 비게 자가나 때마다 시시 상계 제바치 그랬어 안데 권제라고 딱단다 루킬루사데 중국에서 왔다 간다 니데스 롱 댄세 아니 제라마 쫑가바 첨부사 호 콩구 송레 송 단데디 어떠잖아.
So the author of this text is this Lama Tsongkhapa. Lama Tsongkhapa was born in the region of Tibet known as Amdo, and there was actually a prediction from the Buddha himself for the coming of Lama Tsongkhapa, and in one teaching the Buddha said, once I've passed, or once I've shown the aspect of passing into parinirvana, there will appear in the world a being who, though showing an ordinary form, will perform actions which are equal to the actions of a Buddha. And this person will appear in the land of snows, in the snowy land. So there was this prediction from the Buddha for the coming of Lama Tsongkhapa. And that's it.
This guy. Oh, that's good. Oh yeah. 다디 아니 람게 조번 남송 산디 다 제라마 쫑고바 첨보 베게 가사다 송망보야 송 시라 망보야 원네 타네다 망고 예베 난디 다 지난 꾸지 떨 송보야 꾸지 멜 송보야 어딘데 망고 예베 난디 꾸지 멜 송래 꾸지 멜 송보래 송선 스토리에서나 또 야구마 당연히 차고 병 아와 타고 왔어 차고 아와 타고 왔어요 공 가서는 꾸지 떨고 로마래 로마前니 단단디 딘데 마다 가서 뒤뒤 임바질라 깡깡에 냠네 제초조 레라보여 봐 고대보 뭐 딘데 차상여 나로 나서야 이기 뒤나네 고나니 디쿠르서디 베메네 비게 가서 게론로 봐서 게론 베페메라 잖아 미게 상담나래 고 미게 슈두야 돈드스야 고나버래 고나네 공다 꾸지메래야 고마 망고 차다네 베게 로마 망보 여바체 디나 좀 제라마 종가 좀 원디 콩쿠버 능신체제 아니 공 지난 제라마 종가 지준 잠배야래 이나야 안 지준 잠배야 코라 이담을 코라 ngara su mid mikebna shi singere cheda jizun jambe yang kita menga shi chishi undi ma dudut this ma sona
so this Master Lama Tsongkhapa during his lifetime gave many different teachings throughout his lifetime, and there are many texts and that he composed and are still around now. But out of all of those, this particular text, the Three Principles of the Path, was given towards the later stage of his life. So he gave many teachings and composed many texts right from the very early years and in his teenage years of his life. He composed texts, but this particular text came about later in his life, and it was requested by one of his disciples who'd been his disciple almost throughout his whole life, and this was a disciple called Nawandrapa, or it's all called Kaza. Saku Nawandrapa. So this disciple of his Nawandrapa had been a disciple of Lama Tsongkhapa right through his life, right from when he was young. And Nawandrapa had requested Lama Tsongkhapa, out of all the extensive teachings and texts that he composed, could he please give a teaching that would be summarizing all those things in a very condensed way, in a way which is easy to understand and which is very condensed. And so it was this text that, in front of many thousands of disciples, because by that time in his life there were many people who went to listen to Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. So in front of many disciples, it was this particular teaching that he gave, which summarizes very succinctly all the teachings of the Buddha. Generally, we think of Lama Tsongkhapa as being an emanation of Manjushri, but he is actually Manjushri. And although we don't have the karma, or people then didn't have the karma to see Manjushri himself, we consider Lama Tsongkhapa to be the emanation, to be someone who is actually in essence Manjushri, but showing himself in an ordinary form.
Oh yeah, 어떠잖아. 자자 차고 병 아완 차고 코나 또 로마 병 다 제라마 정거 좀 로마 병원은 삼기 미겨 봐. 공기 개론 롱발이야. 아니 기루 공바 자단게 어딘데 차담다. 또 어떻게 간 걸 롬니 이어 봐. 시루니 비게 딘네 차려. 어딘데 공 딘데 로마에 배 삼기 미겨 봐 거라. 다야 쉬인은 송긴 제라마 정거 첨보래. 원에 타네다 라마 삼기 미겨와 어딘데 제제 어다 야 토마 슝긴다 송긴이가 배 시우지 삼기 미겨버려 돼요.
So both the author of this text and the person who requested this teaching to be given are both very special people. Lama Tsongkhapa, as we've said, an emanation of Manjushri and an incredible master, both a scholar and practitioner. And also this disciple of his, Saku Nawandrapa, was an amazing practitioner, an amazing scholar, and again someone who was a student of, a disciple of Lama Tsongkhapa throughout his life. And in fact, later on, Saku Nawandrapa, in this area of Gyalrong, this area in Tibet, which is on the border with China, where this teaching was given. In that particular area, later on, Saku Nawandrapa built 108 monasteries in that area. So both the 108 monasteries, and so both the teacher of this text and the person who requested it, both very special people.
어떠잖아. 다들 람기 쪼보 남숨스 쪼보. 쪼보 남숨도 가래서나 니종 chanjusem 양탁배 따봤음티. 람기 쪼보 남숨 쪼보 시그레 싸와 시그레. 어다 디 가래서나 디 상계 고만 두다. 동네 탐셔 방배 탈바 첨보 상계 고만 두다래. 고만 두발래야 디 숨보디여나 니종 chanjusem 양탁배 따봤음보여나 상계 고만 대라도 두두야지. 니네 증마산에 상계 고만 두두야 말해. 탈바 첨보 사디. 제가 어다 디 여나 여데 숨보디 여는 밴디기여. 숨보디는 찍마산에 디기여만 제가 람기 비게 쪼보. 딱 싸와서는 희스는 여는 맨나 디데래. 제가 람기 쪼보 남송송.
So now the name of the text is the three principal aspects of the path. Or three main aspects, or three principal aspects of the path. What that refers to is the three aspects, which is renunciation, Bodhicitta, and then the right view, or the correct view, or wisdom. The reason why these three things are known as the root of the path, or the main aspects of the path, is because basically if you're talking about going from the state that we're in to becoming a Buddha, then if you've got these three things, if you have generated in your mind renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom, or emptiness, then you can become a Buddha. if any of these three things are missing, if they're not complete, if you don't have one of them, then it's not possible to become a Buddha. So the essence, or the roots, if you like, of becoming enlightened, becoming a fully enlightened Buddha, lies in having these three aspects. If any are missing, you can't do it. But if they're all there, then you can.
다 되면 수고인다. 디 토마데라 캔조 차비 여러와. 당고데라. 지저 라마 남라 차차로스 도와. 이게 지저 라마 남라 차차로스. 어디 아니 최주스 쳐버 줘봐. 지저 라마 남 차차로스 최주스. 쳐버 줘봐. 단디 가래서나 아니 별라 이 그룹에 땡주 탐지 올이야 최주 요아래 요야 가래서나 기부 탐바 런이 기부 탐바 되지 아니 비게 땡주 강 제비는 게래야 아니 비게 비게 가서래 랑 개위 딱한다 비게 다쳐와요 봐 랑기 비게다 어다 비게 최주유 딱한다 될 대위리아 쳐버려 같은게는 요래 디가래서는 아니 찍네 랑이 기부 탐바이마 기부 탐바츠도 제 다른 제게 요래 랑 데베 이담라 라마 고다 될 정도다 직체 니버디 아니 커도달라 땡주 비게 가는 마다 송야 디게는 개인 바제시야 비게 손나 모왕 딘데기 과바 유인사 원디 세브레 도잖아.
So the text begins then with the first line, which you've all got in front of you, which says expressing the homage. So the first line says, "I bow down to my perfect gurus." Now, as the title there suggests, that the first line then, what is it doing? It's expressing homage. Now, in general, when you're looking at any text, any Dharma text, and particularly Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist Dharma text, they always begin with a homage. They always begin with some sort of homage, and there's a number of reasons why that's the case. Principally, what it does is it expresses that the person who's writing, the person who's composing the text, is a valid person to write the text. So the fact that they produce a homage at the beginning, and the fact that they pay homage to a particular object at the beginning, validates that they are someone who is a genuine person writing this, or a valid person to write the text. Also, the second major reason for putting a homage at the beginning of a text is to take away any of the obstacles towards writing the text, and to try and accumulate merit or positive karma in order to make the text go well, in order composing the text to go well. So there's two reasons principally why at the beginning of all texts you'll find a homage.
방송야 된주 강선배 개개인 바지 시야다 더도 다 공부돼 돼 말와 엠피게 로베 동에 탐지선 땡게 대발이야 티야 송요 제가 더도 공부 강강 루비아 체도 어디 토마틴 세
So the clearing away of obstacles to writing the text and the accumulation of merit to writing the text is really the temporary aim or temporary purpose of the homage. The ultimate purpose in the homage again is the same as we were saying before. This motivation or intention to benefit and to bring happiness and remove suffering from all living beings.
뭐야? 다 기준사의 제 준스의 정보 용 것들 기준사인데 제사디 로봇 하다 제베 배대 나란소다 오 심진 용게 어쩌고 노버능신 뭐네 타네 다 권도 강가 중에 송 인상 들리 디기 강가 중에 송 인상 제스 다 디게 뱀버서지 제체 좀버산디 아니 고송 예제 탐제 아니 희와 배등원에 타네 비게 심 쪼베 렉자메 봐 렉제 셈마주다 쪼버틴데 짠 배 타지도 배 참바드 제베 당이 송 인상 참제 당이 송 인상 좀 봐서 기준스 고송 류가 예선 배 신도네 들보 이 대선자 좀 봤어.
So the word here used in Tibetan is the word jetsun. The two parts to that, there's jet and sun. If we look at our English translation, then that would come in the two last words, perfect gurus there. The reason that word is expressed in that way is for two reasons. We use the word guru or je in Tibetan as meaning someone who is a pinnacle of the world, someone as far as our temporary and our ultimate happiness is concerned. It's like a jewel. It's like something very special, something which is really the pinnacle of all precious things within the world, and that indicates gurus or je in the word there. And then sum, referring to the perfection, why these beings are perfect, and the reason why really comes down to, as we've been saying, that beings like this have calmed their minds, have calmed the delusions and the afflictive emotions in their minds, and their body, speech and mind is pacified from all negative emotions. And from that reason, they're perfect. That reason they're given this expression of being perfect.
뭐야, 어떻게 벽을 선스데게리아 선민 밴드 있기도 선민 밴드 다 내 선스데게 흰거 맞죠? 선민 밴드 있어. 선민 밴드 사다 찬스 선스데게 신이나 어디디 고여러 발로스 다가래.
Sami Benda is how this same word comes out in Sanskrit as well.
어떻잖아. Sami Benda 야 어디세? 지준체 아 라마산디 급들이야 조조디 지준 장배양라 지라마 정신 지준 장배양라 송구요래 라마 조 연면나디 지준 장배양래 공고 라마 연면 지준 장배양 어디서 지준 장배양라 라마스 어떻잖아.
And then, so we're talking here about Jetsun Lama, or the perfect gurus. In particular, the guru that Lama Tsongkhapa is referring to, or which is his root guru, if you like, in this perfect expression, perfect gurus, is Manjushri.
어디 라사디 달라사디 비게 연댕 캠베 연댕 강화 제베 연댕 강화 킨제 또조 켄징이 버들 킨제 연댕 비게 강화 집어 연댕 중네 라나 거야 강가 중네 선자 아니 디 광에 매면서 라슬라치 마사디 다 팬도신 나란서 아마데 나란서 팬도고 싫어라 봐. 뭐네 타네 그리지 뭐 어디나 신세 아니 팬도케 그래서 다 팬도시 다 광에 매버치 딘디스 라마사 지단 딘디세 다 선생님은 구루스도 구루 어디에나
And then the word Lama there, well, it's not in our text, but the gurus, we've used the Sanskrit guru there, but the word Lama in Tibetan has these two parts to it again, la and ma. The la is referring to, again, someone who has that ability to be the source of all goodness, source of one's happiness and the source of one's reduction in suffering. So that it's an expression of there's nothing higher than that. Someone who has that ability to be able to bestow one and teach one, lead one towards happiness and away from suffering. And we see we give the expression la ma, we say ma, because such a person is kinder than one's mother, in fact. If you think of the kindness of your mother and how beneficial and kind a mother is towards you, this person is actually higher than that. Our mothers are kind, but this person can lead us even further towards happiness and away from suffering. So we say Lama. In Sanskrit, guru.
구루체 어디체 다 간다 연대군기 휴 tin시지 송구도와 나란조 아니 비게 산다가 과게 비게 다라는 과게 연대네 제 타락가래서나 다 란로 마녀사 땡게 대번 로야 봐 어디게 간가 발람네 디아티 나니티 어디 손인자 제자 tin시지 연대긴 중네 연대 간가 주변 중네 시 아니 비게 가래서나 거딩이 차네 제비는 배때 광는 매봐 어디라는 거네 타네 내가 디기네 타르 디기 때비 인자들 대용 거리 대콘 요마 제가 어딘데지를 고요.
So one should understand this Lama or guru, why is why that term's applied, and what the meaning of it is that whether it be temporary happiness and whether it be temporary relief from suffering, or whether it be moving along the path and even the ultimate, the final happiness and final relief of suffering of enlightenment and Buddhahood, those things come about due to these people, comes about due to one's Lama or due to one's Guru. So we use this expression, this very sort of, lost the word now, the expression Lama or Guru, we use this towards someone who has that ability to be able to lead you both into temporary and into ultimate happiness.
오야 어떻잖아. 어디체 다 단다디 델레야 라마스제 다 라마남 차차로 치지 다조 라마 개베신이 개침부치제 뒤지그래. 제가 그래서는 다 지나 라마리아 상계 임바요아래 상계 뭐임바 개베신이 남았대네. 제 라마 종고 전부도 상계 뭐래디요. 지준 잡에는 상계 뭐래. 데레. 라마래. 어디 임바요 임바체 다디 마임베 아니 찬선 파바 베게 청주선 봐 파괴 강사 된대요 야한테 마임베 소소 깨보 베게 소소 깨보스나 안 베게 가서 동번이 그 무슨도 또 맞대 봐 강가 지나 고바 예버지고 딘데게 개베싱이 제 요래 어디서 가래서나다 디 가래서나 디조 디게디 아니 가래서나 원에 타네 같은데 되게 나란서 차세요 샷 가르선 상계기 는 나란서 최 송네 다다다 뭐 해내마 송바 진길로 가리네 달로 니동하게 하나 니동 그렇게 점으로 뒤고는 거 송바래 된마 제 귀니 지지 귀니 단다 소설래야 렁이ля 뭐 스피게 상계 무슨 제 두고야 말아서 이나 양모서 상계기 비게 오다 비게 실험 마야와 뭐에 내지 비게 나나 뭐 송게데 라마 송자 라마 개베신 있어요. 야, 대송인자 제자 아니 라마 사티 라마 개베신 있어요. 그린 첨부제 송에 되래 도잖아.
So this whole topic which arises first in the teachings of relying upon a spiritual master, or the topic of what means a spiritual master. In general, a Lama or a spiritual teacher can be an actual emanation of the Buddha. So obviously, in the case of people like Lama Tsongkhapa, Manjushri, these are spiritual teachers who are in essence Buddhas, obviously just showing themselves in those ways. But a Lama or teacher could also be someone who is an Arya Bodhisattva, someone who's a Bodhisattva who's directly realized emptiness, or an ordinary person, a Bodhisattva or an ordinary person who's not yet realized emptiness. So a Lama can be any of those types of beings. But the importance, the reason why a Lama or a spiritual teacher is so important is that although the Buddha gave the teachings 2,000 or 2,600 odd years ago now, he gave those teachings directly to people. Unfortunately, we weren't around and we weren't there to be the recipient directly of the Buddha's teachings. So if you look, there has been the lineage that's come all the way down from the Buddha to today. And if you examine and see who is it that now gives you those teachings, where's the place where you get those teachings now? It's not from the Buddha anymore. It's from your spiritual teachers. It's from your lamas or from your gurus. So the person who directly gives you, or from whom those teachings directly come to you, in particular, is your own spiritual master or your own spiritual teacher, which is why it's so important, the subject of one's guru or lama.
어떠잖아. 어디체 다 되니? 어디 비게 랑이 상계 고방 줘발라야. 아니 최만어바 최신만어바 가리 있는 람땡게 있고 람데 어디 송인상 아니 비게 다 상계 고방 줘이나 비게 라마 상계 이내데 메네다 랑근원에 상계 대비이나 상계 랑다 줘방아 랑그 전다 칭인데 남바 딘디 미 남바 때네 딘디 치 인삼바치 상계 랑 비게 랑그 전다 칭이 딘디 다 상계 대비이나 되네 랑로 상계 진을 주고 아니 비게 소남 소다 파지에 씹어도 소텔라 소야 어디체자 고바 첨보를 해줘요 고바 첨보
And there's a very meaningful purpose in seeing your spiritual teacher, your Lama or Guru, as being a Buddha. Because even if the person themselves, whether they are actually a Buddha or not, from their side, is not the main point. The main point is how you see that person. And the reality is that if you're able to see your spiritual teacher, your Lama, your Guru, as being a Buddha, if you can really see the spiritual teacher as being the essence of the Buddha, then the blessings you get from that person are equivalent to the blessings you'd get from the Buddha. The purification that you can do on the basis of that person is the same as the purification you'd get from the Buddha himself. So there's a very great need or great purpose for oneself to try to see your spiritual teacher as being in essence the Buddha.
와야 어디지? 다 디네 라마 남라스 남스도 멍지르바 멍지. 다 디나리아 라마 우마바다. 아니 지준 렌다바. 됐네. 다 된다. 라마 우마바다 지준 렌다바 딩이 제 라마 정거바 준비 로마레. 라마레. 라마에레라 로마레. 니가 라루 니가 다. 라마에레 지준 정거 쳐보니 강가바 최선 로마에레. 라마도 로마니가 해봐. 다 들에 가셔죠, 봐. 디나네 혼이지래.
And there's a particular reason why it says in that first line there, I bow down to my perfect gurus, using a plural, because obviously Lama Tsongkhapa had more than just one teacher. In particular, he had these two other teachers known as Tsongkhapa and Rendawa, and those two masters were both his teachers, but they also became his disciples as well. So because of the greatness of Lama Tsongkhapa, you have this unusual situation where his actual teachers were not only teachers, but they later on actually became his disciples.
뭐야, 어디지? 단다데 라마 우마고 쉬안디. 춘주간에, 부 춘주간에 지준 잠배야. 나라서 미제바나 신체. 아주 미타나라고 그러봐. 되는 신체 승인배 강사 기부 탐바래. 고 라마 우마바스한디. 쉬안디. 다 지준 된다바 킹거봐. 사게
And so from these two teachers you have Jetsun Rendawa and Lama Umapa. Lama Umapa was, although he was only said to be only an ordinary being, he wasn't let particularly along the path or realized. From a very young age, it was said that Lama Umapa used to directly see Manjushri. He had this ability or this blessing that he could always talk, as if he was right there in the room. With Manjushri. So this was a particular quality of Lama Umapa.
Dini tanda dina soda tubjin legi doji sere. Kongdang ani kasa je chögyön besan sada karasan ta lamrim sungni dingi kuni bege gyubati. Ode song inzang oda ta kona ta xi chung song xi zwe ta je lama Tsongkhapa chimbo la lama be ngobju haya. Yo o dige kangal chaase la.
Two of his other sort of closer gurus, so we said the same, Lama Tsongkhapa had many gurus, and we had one called Lay Dorje, and then Chechi Pelzang, particularly the Lam Rim teachings, that the transmission of the Lam Rim teachings came through him. But in general we say that Lama Tsongkhapa had more than 50 gurus.
Yeah, oda di tada lamgyo zobo namso sadi lamring ingbu tigere lamring nang zo tige su dusha ba.
Now this text here, the three principal aspects of the path, we said it summarizes, or it's a summary of the teachings. In particular, it's a summary of the Lam Rim teachings.
다된 지지지 럽산데도 다디오다 니버디 상바 탐자디 개별 송도고 닝베드 개세 담반남 경아벨라 깬데 탄데는 용어 지단 뉴신 다 시야버차스 좀바 탐자스 그럼 좀바 다된 시기 탐자와.
So the next verse then, the first verse here, the promise to compose, as it says, the essential meaning of the victorious one's teachings, the path praised by all the holy victors and their children, the gateway of the fortunate ones desiring liberation. I shall try to explain as much as I can. So as the title there says, this first verse is known as a promise to compose.
다디 디 가사 베디 비즈마다 코데버 싫어요. 다디 개별 송도군이 닝베트스 상계기 송도 딱간다 게리시도 된대요. 딱 알았으나 이게 충분 게리시도 써도 간다 뒤자 간라 간상 받쳐지 송버래. 딕조 가래서나 내가기 엔비게 가서 동의신 내가 원도 고마 원도 알아서 하도 미스들 봐. 미 토배 안에 이제 타락 가래서나 녀릭 동네 탐제 밤에 텐트 토배 어딘데 송버 샤다래도 어디 송인자 개별 송도 군기 닝부 튼스 다 디게기는 디 가사 디비게 랑냠네 제발 토다 봐서 그 뒤에는 고야 될래야 당고 때 니중 거랬어. 니중 셰. 게 송도 닝부 튼사디 인중티 고des 인중 송세
So the first line there, which says the essential meaning of the Vigdis One's teachings. Again, as we've mentioned already, what is the essential meaning? The essential meaning in the Buddha's teachings are the ability of those teachings to lead one to greater and greater happiness. So the happiness of within samsara of human and God lives, the temporary happiness that one can find, but not only that, obviously the happiness of moving along the path, and of course the final happiness of enlightenment and Buddhahood. So the fact that the teachings can do that is the essential meaning of the teachings. But in particular, that first line here, out of the three principles of the path, is referring to renunciation, the first of the three limbs.
Oh yeah. 다들 또 가래서나 랑이 아니 과외 나 강에 그제도 이 코라바 나랑도 수부들 렌상 수부들 코라바 네 중차도 잠바 아니 캬바 또와 겐고 차온 나게 요래 다 켜네 만데 강가 연구도 오 대선자 강에 그제도 랑래야 대선자 랑게랑 다디 게 매베 딜레 타네 땡게 대버스 두고도 단다디 류딘들 렌 차래 류딘들 렌 사모티 미 남주 뒤에 인상 아니 뭐이 내주 랑가랑 잡아 쳐줘 봐 다랑 대와 땡게 대와 두고도 디 컨데 고도 코바싱이 컨디시래도 내주로디 딜레 타야 타바싱이 딱 딜레 타네 딜레 야같이 노면도 딜레 다이 잡아 쳐니 딜레 탄도 있게 하죠 봐 딜레 인중스게 딜레 랑가랑 잡아텔 잡아라 봐 랑가 못하잖아.
So, in essence, what's the meaning then of that first limb of renunciation? Really what we're talking about here is the fact that if you look into your own life and the life of humans and all living beings, you can see very clearly that there's an enormous amount of suffering that we undergo, whether it be physical suffering or mental suffering, the suffering that the body gives us when it gets sick, the suffering of getting old, all the different problems and the mental and physical problems that we undergo. Nobody can really deny those, and if you look carefully, you'll see that's the case. Having seen that, then the question obviously arises, well, is there anything I can do about that? Is there any sort of way of being free of all those sufferings? And when you look and you see that through following the path and through, there is such a thing as liberation, there is such a thing as freedom from all those various types of sufferings, then the mind that wishes to attain that freedom, that wishes to be free from all those sufferings, and that's what really we mean here by renunciation. So in a sense, it's like having very strong compassion for oneself, because what do you begin with? You begin with that recognition of one's own suffering, your individual, your particular sufferings, of physical and mental sufferings, and the wish to be free of those, the wish to reach a state of freedom from all those different types of sufferings. And that's what we're really meaning here by renunciation.
도체. 다데와라. 계속 공부되지. 계세 담반남기 ngakbelam singibati. 계세 담반남기 ngakbelam 산디. 아니 다디 셰그요레. 참니지 전주고 셈 사디. 과야 계단티 송고요레. 티체.
And then the second line there, the path praised by all the holy victors and their children. That second line is particularly referring to this second aspect of bodhicitta.
어디 계세 담반는 게 ngak벨람스. 참니지 전주 셈산델라야. 어떻게 상계 세제바. 계세 진수 간간 ngak바준. 동아 당과에다 다 삼바상고 될 상가주야 말에. 진짜 수익을 개비나 어떤 거는 다네. 기본 5소용. 어디서 인자 등학주 망고요. 전주샘. 어디서 자 계세 담반는 게 ngak벨람스. 전주샘데 송고요.
And why is in particular bodhicitta the thing which is praised by all the holy victors and their children? Because this mind, this mental capacity of bodhicitta, is something which is, whenever it's born, within whoever it may be born into, the Buddhas praise that. The Buddhas look at that this essence of compassion, love and compassion which blossoms into bodhicitta is something which is always praised by all the Buddhas and the Buddhist children.
다디 와달라 겔네 탄도 남긴 중어데스 겐데 탄도 중어 어디 다디 양탁에 따와 비게 띵중 동배 전다디 송구셔도
And then the third line there, the gateway of the fortunate ones desiring liberation. Here, what are we referring to when we're talking about the gateway? We're referring to this wisdom, or the wisdom understanding emptiness. In particular, the understanding of dependent arising, interdependence, emptiness and interdependence. This is what we mean as the gateway to liberation.
다 견den산데 아니 상계 좀 된데게 추기 내로 띵중 동배 된다. 요새 간가 되는 줘봐래. 띵중래. 띵중 인배 인자 아니 라왕 줘봐. 띵중 뭐 인게 되는데 아니 뭐 인게 되면 라왕 줘봐지 요 말에. 되면 라왕 줘봐 동바래. 세세. 어디 뭐에 내주 송 거예요. 지금 내주 뭐에 내주 어디 송인자 아 단디 견den사 견데 탄도 견den사 가르스나 간사 원본 넘보 뭐에 내주 고통게 배상을 당겨 유니 어떻게 견den사래. 견데 견데 탄도 남기죠. 다 견데 대주 탄도스도 다 과외 나는 문에 차네. 동네 여바다 대신에 탄도 땡게 대봐. 두번 땡게 탄도 어디게 아니 가사 어디 최근 단내로 뭐마티 동반이 다와 숨고 인소 디 대송고.
And then so the gateway of the fortunate ones. What we're meaning here by first of all the fortunate ones is those people who have the intelligence or the faculties to be able to understand this nature of wisdom or emptiness, to understand the fact that phenomena, because they depend upon each other, because the phenomena are dependent, they therefore lack or empty of any independence. So an intrinsic nature in phenomena is lacking. And why is it lacking? Because phenomena are dependent, because the phenomena depend upon each other, and this whole relational existence or nature to all things. So this is something which is understood by people with sharp faculties or with intelligence. If you're able to understand this, then one is fortunate. Why? Because as far as if you desire liberation, if liberation is what you're looking for, then this is the gateway to it. This is the way to reach liberation, through this understanding of the complementary nature of interdependence and lack of intrinsic existence.
어떻잖아. 어디체 탄도 남기. 중고 사디 아니 죽세 고탐바 깨고 중고 탐바스. 어다 가래서는 비게 타바토 발라 딕 생고르마도 니 마인기지 요 말소. 중고 간까 타바 비게 첨부터 가래 있네 토발라 인지민지 니네 로과사티 중고 탐바. 그래서나 아니 타바토발라 알아서 몽바 멤버들 세워. 몽바의 왕게 아니 미시바체 랭바사니 고 코바 코르티기 여봐. 제가 몽바의 멤버들 세발라야 시르고 드레메스그레다. 또만 유도베 시르부터 드레메 능시. 어디 고그래. 맞아 지나 나공도 매바 써발라야. 나와 거래마도 나공 매서 나와 전 매발라. 나공 매바 차고 말봐. 나와 연어 거다가 매바 차로 받고 매바 차로 봐. 요 말에. 니마 샤스나 데 처음에 나군 되면 도 니마 샤스나 거. 세서. 어디 능시 나주 교수 몽바 머리바 비게 나군 능시. 데 가래 비게 매바 써버렸으나 어디 싫어 동반이 또 왜 싫어 니마도 디 계스나 거 매바 차로. 어떠잖아. 니슨 거야.
And then now why is particularly is this the gateway to liberation? Because in reality, if one wants to be liberated, whatever type of liberation it may be, there's no other way of doing it other than realizing the emptiness or realizing the empty nature of all phenomena. That's the only way. If one wishes to be liberated, one has to realize that nature to reality. Without it, there's no liberation. Why? Because when we're talking about what liberation really means, liberation, what is it? It's the ending of our ignorance. It's the ending of our way of seeing the world, which is wrong, which is incorrect, which is a mistaken or wrong way of seeing things. So the ceasing of that, or the ending of that type of ignorance, is what leads to us being liberated. Very much like if you're talking about the darkness and the ending of darkness, you don't get rid of darkness by just wishing it to go away. what gets rid of darkness is the light, or the sun coming up. That naturally ends the darkness or takes away darkness. In the same way that the ignorance or the lack of seeing or the darkness within our own minds is taken away by the wisdom understanding emptiness, or the wisdom understanding phenomena as being interdependent. So in that way, it's the gateway to liberation.
뭐야? 다디 어디 지단女性 다기 시합을 차스. 지단女性. 어디 킹종 봤어. 킹종. 그래서는 젤라마 종가버 전부 전에 지수자면 상계. 어디리 가리네 랑가 강가 치마 지진 캔이 캐만은 송투여래. 송야래 봐. 레디 계란게 디아구원나시 에네 지단女性의 거제 두두기. 들어라 보자 그 봐. 거제 두두지 마시기 송거로다. 디 송야데 가래서는 다 사고 병 강화타고야 근데 그거는 계란 그죄에 다 로마 되게 편하시는 거제 두두지 마서. 근데 송아데 킹종을 마도 강가 킹겨요. 킹종 봤어.
And then the last line there says, this I shall try to explain as much as I can. Now obviously the line there is saying something, because Lama Tsongkhapa himself doesn't need to be saying, I'll try to explain as much as I can, because we're saying that Lama Tsongkhapa is in essence Manjushri, and if he is in essence Manjushri, he already knows everything. He doesn't need to say, I'm try to explain. He can obviously explain very well. And so what this is showing in this last line is this quality of whoever you are, however great you might be, to still maintain this level of humility. The humility of showing that, yes, I've been requested by Sakuna and Drapa to give this text, and I'll try my best to do it, even though he can obviously do it perfectly well, but he still expresses that to show us that humility is always important.
뭐야, 어떠잖아. 어디 거제 두두 딱 내 관심 봐. 거제를 보죠. 그게 제외 시기 인스타 제외 왕기 그냥 티버나시. 어디 킹종 말에 킹종 다 킹종은 하고 봐. 마게 매베체. 배 마사스 당은 벽에는 마사스 그래. 오늘 단에 유엔네 당원에 단에 배 강가케 미 컴다 매바 강가킹게 매 던도시마 마사스 봐. 로사 아시베 마사스 어디 디소스 거래요. 마사스네.
So again, the intention here in this line, out of love, obviously Lama Tsongkhapa is giving these teachings, and he can do it. There's no problem for him to be able to give these teachings. It's for someone who's realized and as accomplished as he is, there's no problem. But still, when he does so, he says, out of love, I'll do my best. I'll do as best as I can to give you these teachings. And so, again, it's showing yourself, cultivating this thing of being lower, that you may be a fantastic realized being, but always you maintain this low position. Maintain this, in Tibetan they say that seeing yourself as lower. So this aspect of humility, whoever you are, it's always important.
먼저 미게마다 계시 탐지 샤오로 봐. 디치아 디sam바 제자 아니 가시 캐바 쉬는 배 마사신데 인데 딱 한다 딘데요. 가시 배 정말 제게 다 요마래 소신기 요마다. 아게 이게 탐지 샤자디 속도 쇼시다. 디버징이 일단 샤는 달 문나 쇼다 좀. 다단디 마사신이 캐바데서 아하 가제다니 배 뭐네 차네 왔다 토고요 말에. 왔다 딘데 마사신이. 대신 그 가르서는 그 이게 디버티네 맞아 신경 말 봐. 지로 지금 신경이 던도 신경 그 내가 요 말. 그 신경이 다 시원데 캐봐요. 어디 디소시.
We see this very clearly in the monasteries when we do the final Geshe exam, and you'll see examples of people who don't really know very much, people who are going to do the Geshe but didn't study very well, and yet when they walk around before they do the Geshe exam, they're very proud and look like they know lots, and they're great Geshes, and they're going to be great Geshes. But when it comes to the actual exam, and then they start getting asked questions, then the sweat starts to pour from them. And then you have opposed to that, you have other people who really do know the studies, have done very well in the studies, and often they'll be very, very humble, and they'll pretend they don't know anything, but they really can't answer any questions, and they're nothing, and they're really small and humble. And when they come to answer the questions in the exam, of course, it's very easy for them. They just roll it off, just rolls off their tongue very easily. So you can see this in the Geshe exams like this.
Oh yeah. 토치안다 단다 뒤줄 있으면 다 시작이 되네. 먼저 다 그래. 돈도 여러 번 주주 이월 배.
What time do we come back?
아,
That's fine. Just cheat it.
주 당시 가라 봐. 어디 양자 제요 도잖아. 예, 저제 매도 당 제라는 신인데 전반대 상계 신도 매를 로버 난다 신라 죄바라쇼 이담 고로라나 메달라 니야다야메 창조 삼조 rinpoche 마게 바나게 개와 냠바 매와야 권의 권도 배워라쇼 동니 다와 rinpoche 마게 바나게 개와 냠바 매와야 권의 권 배워라쇼 강리라베 꼬르베 신간데 판단대와 말륜죠 제레스원 댄지 가조이 샤베 시데바도 땡교로 제 도잖아.